Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. In today's episode, we are back here very briefly to recap the progress on the Wither Skeleton Farm, because even though the ice boat road doesn't go all the way out to the Nether hub, and even though it's mostly made of packed ice, it is helping us refresh the spawns here in the Wither Skeleton Farm. So this goes out about 120 blocks in that direction, more or less clears out all of the spawns from the spawning platform, and yes, I have had to put a glass box around here because the blazes kept falling into the zombie piglin trap and causing a little bit of chaos. There's still a little bit of room down there that they can still fireball me through, and yes, occasionally they drift down into the Wither Skeleton portion of the farm. We could do bits and pieces about that, but for the moment, I'm just happy getting hold of all of these Wither Skeleton drops, and in the time it's taken me to build that ice path and maybe swipe a couple of times at these Wither Skeletons, I have acquired 24 Wither Skeleton skulls. That is enough to summon the Wither 6 times. I've also gotten enough bones that I had to start converting them into bone blocks, the same with the coal. I have a great deal of stone swords, which I'm just going to chuck into lava before we leave, but we might actually summon the Wither 6 times in this video, because I want to show you folks a couple of easy methods of cheesing the Wither, basically killing it without even having to fight it, really. Make that 25. Alright, I think that will probably do. I'm going to bring back a bunch of the blocks and stuff from this with me as well. We probably won't need to visit this farm again for a while, but honestly, with the amount of coal it gives, I am tempted to return here quite frequently. And there's all kinds of stuff that we can end up using the Wither for, which we might end up doing as well. But for now, I think we're going to head back to the overworld. We're going to grab a few blocks of soul sand, and we can cover a couple of easy, cheesy methods of fighting the Wither. The first method, and probably one of the more expensive, and even one of the ones that has the most likelihood of going wrong, is to kill the Wither using Iron Golems. I still recommend doing this down lower in the world in some sort of tunnel, because the one thing the Wither has over Iron Golems is the fact that the Wither can attack stuff from height. It can fly up into the air and shoot down on the Iron Golems, and the Iron Golems won't really be able to defend themselves from that, so I highly recommend doing it someplace that has a roof, at least. But we can make a few Iron Golems here. We can probably make 4 with the supplies that I brought with me, and I think 3 or 4 Iron Golems is usually enough to take out the Wither all by themselves. Of course, you have to make sure that the Iron Golems don't injure themselves too much in the process, but all that's left for us to do is place a Wither Skeleton skull on top of the frame here, summon the Wither, run back down the tunnel so we're out of harm's way, wait for the Wither to charge up and explode, and the Golems should rush in to take care of it for us. And here we go, let's see how the Golems fare. Looks like the Wither can't quite reach them yet, although, yeah, it looks like it might have actually gone upwards. Yep, it's certainly up there. Let's see if we can break this through and allow the Golems in to attack the Wither, because right now they don't really seem to be paying all that much attention. The Wither is pretty idle as well. There we go, the first Golem has drawn its fire, and at this point you'll notice the Wither's boss bar declining dramatically. It does seem to be going out into a flooded cave or an aquifer right there, but we don't need to worry too much about that, because it's focusing its fire on the Golems, who are doing pretty well at taking care of it. It's already looking like it's a bad situation for the Wither to be in. A couple of the remaining Golems still have the Wither effect, so they're going to take a bit of damage, but we can collect the Nether Star from that, and we even get a Wither Rose as a result of that, because one of the Golems did end up dying. And one of the traits of the Wither is that any mobs it kills will drop a Wither Rose, and it looks like the Wither effect has worn off on these guys, and they're all still alive. I feel a bit bad for them, so we're going to use a couple of iron ingots here and patch them up a little bit. There we go. So as we saw there, 4 Iron Golems was, if anything, more than enough. I think 3 Iron Golems would take care of the Wither quite handily, and it certainly makes the job easier for the player. All I had to do was stand back, and we still got a Nether Star out of that, because the Wither is guaranteed to drop a Nether Star regardless of how it is killed. It could be killed by any number of things, and it would still drop a Nether Star at the end of the fight. It's still worth taking a few safety precautions like the tunnel that I dug here, and it's probably worth having some decent gear on you just in case the fight doesn't go the Iron Golem's way, in case the Wither escapes into a cave or manages to fly up to where the Iron Golems can't hit it. But of course, once it's taken enough damage, it's going to float back down anyway, at which point the Iron Golems make pretty quick work of the Wither. The next method is going to require us to grab 4 obsidian blocks and find a decent patch of the bedrock ceiling in the nether. Having come up here to the spot above the ice roads in my nether hub, I'm kind of apprehensive about making sure that we can do this right, because this is one of the more unpredictable methods, mainly because we need to find an appropriate patch of bedrock that we can effectively trap the wither in. Bedrock is one of the few blocks that the wither cannot break. There are a couple of others like end portal frames and things like that, but none of those are especially favorable for fighting the wither and trapping it the way that bedrock is. So we're looking for an area where we can summon the wither and it's going to get trapped in a patch of bedrock, which means that we need to look for a patch of bedrock that is both the right shape and also has enough space around it that we can build the wither and also build a platform of obsidian underneath it so it's unable to break blocks and drift downwards. And since bedrock's generation is, I believe, determined by the world seed, this is going to be different for every world. So the coordinates at which I'm able to fight the wither this way are not necessarily going to be the same coordinates that you folks are. But usually the best way to assess this is just to clear out a decent sized area of the netherrack just below the bedrock ceiling, and hopefully we'll find what we're looking for. And I'm thinking this right here might actually have exactly what we want. Once again, this is a slightly more unpredictable, a little bit more volatile method of summoning the wither, so we do have to be prepared for stuff going horribly wrong. So while we're up here away from the piglins, I've switched my gold helmet out for the diamond one, and I should probably actually grab my diamond chest plate just in case, because if we're up in the ceiling of the nether, then we're not going to need to worry too much about maneuverability. We need to worry about things like wither projectiles. But what we have here is a fairly open section of bedrock. We've got a block here that we're going to be trapping the wither inside, and there are blocks all around it which should hopefully contain the wither. Now, there isn't a block right there, but the block of bedrock behind that should be enough to contain that. Likewise, there isn't a block here, but I don't know if the wither will be able to escape in that direction. I'm hoping not. Now, in order to trap the wither in bedrock, we're going to need to build a T-shape of obsidian to trap the wither and place the wither on top of it. It's just a useful guideline you could probably do without these 3 blocks here, but that block there is the one the wither is going to be spawning on. Think of it as the tail block. And we're going to need to be able to place the soul sand in a T-shaped formation like this and still have room to place the 3 wither skeleton skulls on there. So that's the important part of building this whole thing up. You need to make sure that there is a room to place those blocks. But the wither can be built in this horizontal formation like this. As long as you have that T shape and it's not interrupted by any other blocks, we should be able to place our 3 wither skeleton skulls, and now you will see that the wither's tail is poking out from that block of bedrock. I'm still going to back up because it's still going to explode when it's summoned, but hopefully it should stay trapped up there, and if it doesn't, we have a fight on our hands. But I do believe that wither is trapped. Right now it doesn't have sight lines to us, it cannot see the player, and it looks like it's... Yep, it's in there. It's in there somewhere. Despite the fact that the wither's tail is not really showing through the bedrock very much, we are still able to hit it a couple of times, and it hasn't broken any blocks around it that have allowed it to escape. We might need to turn on the hitboxes with F3 and B so we can see where the wither is, but you can see from that it's actually pretty firmly trapped up here in the bedrock. And a couple more hits should bring it down nice and easily. And once again, if you have enough room to summon Iron Golems up in here, then you might even be able to kill it with Iron Golems this way, and that'll be a nice, easy fight for you. We'll leave this patch of obsidian up here just in case we feel like using it again, but that is Nether Star number 2 claimed. Although I doubt we're going to return to this area too often, because the next method we're going to explore is a lot more reliable, and all it requires is for us to have access to the end. Because the end has one piece of bedrock that we are pretty much certain is going to generate the right way, and that is the bedrock return portal, the fountain, the nest, whatever you want to call it, at the center of the end island. This will always have a perfect 3x3 flat area of bedrock that we can use to spawn and trap the wither. And in order to do this properly, I've dug out a little bit more of the space around this to show you that the 3x3 that we saw there is not necessarily the base of it. And if we spawn the wither directly underneath the center here, then that's the area it is easiest trapped, because there is no bedrock above a lot of these blocks of bedrock. There is one block of bedrock there, but that's not enough to trap the wither. It needs to have something over the top of its head, and it can fly easily through these portal blocks and out into the end, where it will probably spend a lot of time trying to fight all of the endermen. So in order to spawn the wither down here in the first place, we are once again going to have to sacrifice an ender chest so that we can get some obsidian. Then we need to find the central block of this bedrock formation, which is this one right here. Let's make sure we're standing on the right block, and we need to place our first obsidian block there, and from there in any direction you can do the arms of the T shape. Incidentally, it should also be safe to build this T shape of obsidian one block further down if you want to, and a little bit more of the Wither's hitbox will be visible to the player that way, but it honestly doesn't make that much of a difference. The Wither will still be trapped by the bedrock surrounding it. So there is no time like the present. Let's fight Wither number 3. And you'll see right there that the hitbox is dropping down onto the obsidian block. I'm going to spend a little bit of time getting away here because I always worry about the Wither's explosion dealing a little bit too much damage. There we go. And now, as you'll see, the Wither is just fully attached to the obsidian portal, and we should just be able to attack it from below. Once again, it'll look like the Wither's tail disappears into the bedrock above, but the hitbox is right there, and it's actually pretty stable for you to hit. And once it floats down and is in melee only mode, you should just be able to attack it a whole bunch until the Wither is dead. And there we go, with relatively little fanfare, we've acquired Nether Star number 3. Now, one thing to bear in mind is that the Wither's projectiles can occasionally go through the portal if you build the obsidian up that high. And what seems to have happened here is that the Wither's projectiles have come through and probably exploded all at once, to be honest, because spawn wasn't loaded at the time, but they've made a bit of a hole in the ground here. So for future Wither kills, we probably want to drop that obsidian by 1 block just to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen, where the Wither's projectiles have gone through the portal and have caused some destruction in the overworld. Luckily, the only thing we had built here was the iron farm, and it was spared the worst of the damage, but obviously if you built anything directly by spawn, then it's in the blast zone at that stage. So I think we'll return to the end and do one more Wither kill that way, just to prove that the Wither can be spawned 1 block further down and still be trapped in the bedrock, and that that's arguably a better method because it involves less destruction of spawn. So this time we've dug a hole in the ground. Our tail block is still in the same place, directly in the center of the bedrock fountain. We're going to have the 4 soul sand like so, and 3 Wither skeleton skulls across the front there. And this time around, you'll see a little bit more of the underside of the Wither poking out from below the portal, but it should still remain trapped by the portal in much the same way it was in our last attempt. There we go, a little bit of damage there, and you can still hear it firing, but you can hear the impact of the Wither skull projectiles, and that is because they're actually hitting at the bedrock this time. Hopefully none of them are going through to the overworld at least, and with a few more hits, the Wither is down, and we have our final Wither star, our final Nether star, and that is 4 of those in one video, which is not too bad. Once again, we still have a whole bunch of Wither skeleton skulls left, so we could do this over and over again if we wanted to. With obsidian farmed from around here and a bit of glass from the overworld, we'd be able to make as many beacons as we really wanted. Oh, and this time spawn was completely untouched. No damage whatsoever. I still need to repair a bit of the damage from before because it didn't drop all of the blocks that it destroyed, but still, this is not the result of the Wither damage from this latest fight. This is the result of the Wither damage from earlier. So while obviously these methods are a little bit cheesy, that's also kind of the point. A lot of players, once they fought the Wither a couple of times, either tire of the destruction the fight causes or just find it a little bit anticlimactic, and they want to get it out of the way so that they can do cool stuff with beacons and Wither roses and all of that kind of stuff. So a lot of the time people will resort to this method. It's also a good method if you're just a little bit afraid of the Wither and you don't really feel like unleashing a destructive force on your world. It's a nice tidy way of getting rid of the Wither without any undue fuss. And I'm not entirely certain how many, if any, of these methods will have worked in Bedrock Edition. Obviously, fighting the Wither with Iron Golems is probably one of the more realistic ones if the Bedrock method doesn't work, but of course, the Wither fight on Bedrock Edition is very different, so I will make no promises in that respect. But that is where we're going to leave it for this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed taking this look at taking down the Wither with me, and I hope you'll enjoy spreading the beacons around your own worlds. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode for me if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care, bye for now.